Welcome, everybody, to another one of our amazing Campus Speak webinars. We have a series of great conversations with very thoughtful people, experts in topics to provoke thought. And we know this time things can be challenging in our budgets, and being able to do some good quality programming for our partners is something we are excited to be able to do. My name is David Stolman. I'm president and co-founder of Campus Speak, and excited to be here with two amazing people that I'll introduce now. First, we have uh, Linnita. Hosten is an amazing speaker that I've been able to get to know over a number of years. And her motto speaks so well to her: excellence in everything, every time. And this Towson University alumni is an educational trailblazer in both her family and determined to never be the last. She's been honored with various awards, including Excellence in Education, Youth Speaker of the Year, 40 Under 40, an Education Book of the Year author, University of Maryland Global Campus Alumni of the Year. And when not on stage, you can find this pescatarian in the produce section of your local grocery store. Window shopping online. Is that really just a window, big window? And likely for the things that she's not going to buy. And then diving into great audiobooks. We'll get to this a little later, but she's passionate about preparing ambitious students to get clear on their dream and to have a plan to confidently pursue it. Additionally, we have with us Eric Rodriguez. His journey is different, and he's been on a personal and professional journey of reinvention. It started at an early age and has taken him literally around the world, where he's seen the role of technology and what that will play in the building of communities tomorrow. In order to prepare for the new era, he knows that students must learn to adapt to their new environments and to be able to expand their skills and evolve their perspectives. Eric's passion for building an inclusive future has led him to be recognized as an Arizona 40 Under 40, a young Hispanic corporate achiever, and a distinguished young engineer. Eric lives in Arizona, and I love this, with his lovely wife and two kids, where they build their own family trivia games for musicals and Marvel movies, which I think is pretty cool. I don't think I would do well in those games, but I would love to watch. We have both of you here to help us talk a little bit about this first generation experience, first generation college students. And until you dive really into this topic, it seems like it's simple. It's like a lot deeper than the calm of the surface, because as you get deeper and deeper into the issues and the sub issues, and not just what the students are dealing with, but what the professionals who serve them can and should be thinking about, it's a great conversation that we're going to have. I want to start with a maybe tough, but maybe simple question. You're back rewriting sort of the rules that you learned as you started college, taking yourself back just a few years, not someone old like me, but just a few years back to that. What was the unwritten rule that kind of hit you in the face that you didn't know until you learned, oh, wow, that is a rule? As you're thinking back to that time of transition, what was the unwritten rule that you came across? And I'll ask Linnita to start us off and then throw it over to Eric.
Definitely the rule that comes to mind is that everything should be in writing. I was so accustomed to doing transactions verbally, asking for something, coming back to get it, but I quickly learned my freshman year things needed to be sent via email. So first I had to learn how to devise an email properly, not just a text message, because that's what I had been doing. So that was the first unwritten rule. Everything needed to be in writing. Any requests, any acts, any modifications. Yeah.
Keep your receipts.
Keep your receipts.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah, for me, David, it was going back to my first day, and it was an introduction to engineering, and I had that speech that a lot of schools, unfortunately, were giving at that time, which was look to your left, look to your right. One of you will not be here in the next coming years, and I was terrified. I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, this is a competition. This is what this is about. It's either you or me. And within hours, I ran into an organization that was there to basically say, hey, we're here to be of service and just ask for help. And it's okay. And it's about cooperation, not competition. And that for me, going back to that freshman year, that that put me up for success, because it was all about, okay, who am I helping? And then who am I asking also for help? And so even though I was a freshman, but within 6 months, I was an experienced freshman. And within a year, I was a sophomore. And you're able there to help other people. And when you help other people, you all are able to grow and you're able to learn more. And so I think that, looking back, was an unwritten rule about the university experience, which was learning is not just about yourself, it's about also how you're helping others learn as well.
That's good,
Love
Eric. It's really
that.
good.
I wonder, what was that window of time like between, oh my, I must take these people out,
Yeah.
and someone else correcting that to say, oh no, no, lift them up, lifts you up.
Mm.
What was that window of time between, was that a short period of time? Was it a longer period of time? And how did you navigate that?
For me, it was a very short period of time, simply because I was already signed up to be part of a program like that, because I cared all about studying and being surrounded by people that cared about student success. I didn't know how student success would come. I think it was just being of service to me. But what you realize, that student success is about being of service to others and building community. And so for that, I was very fortunate that it happened in the first few days. But I realized that that doesn't happen all the time. And so I was very mindful as I was growing my collegiate experience, that I wanted to tap into those freshmen early on, or as soon as you walked onto campus, say, hey, it sounds like a competition, but it doesn't have to be a competition. It can be a cooperation as well, and that will help you thrive.
And I know, Linnita, for you, that network and that networking piece is big. What was that
Mhm.
like for you when you started to, when you got into a network of value and use, where you
Yeah.
were of and got value from? What was that transition? Was it short? Was it long? How did you get to a place in that network?
For sure. Very similar to Eric, there was a program on campus. I forgot how I learned about it. I think another student might have mentioned it to me, but it came with a scholarship. So my mindset was not as of Eric's. Mine was, how can I save money? Who's giving out scholarships? And part of the program, yes, it was a scholarship program, but it was based and rooted in community, accountability academically and socially. So to qualify for the scholarship, I had to one get involved. I thank God that that structure even existed, because if it had not been for that program, I don't know how successful I would have been and how engaged I would have been. So you had to participate in a and it was building too. You had to join. The second year you had to lead something, even if it was informally. Then the third year you had to apply to be the captain or lead. You had to go after it. So I admired that in hindsight, because I knew at the end of the year, okay, well, I'm going to have to run it to keep that scholarship. I'm going to have to advance. So in that community, though, I met other students. They were all first gen, and or they were either first in their families to attend college, or they were first U.S. born students. So it's
Hmm.
a very diverse network of people, and very similar to Eric, the community was the best part. It wasn't the scholarship, because it wasn't that much off, but it was the relationships you built with
Yeah.
the other students. Yeah.
That's interesting. It's almost like the people at Townsend knew what they were doing when they designed this program. It's almost like they knew what they were doing. But so
Yeah.
what I'm hearing in it is that there was a very clear structure of almost like a funnel of getting you more engaged, not just in
Mhm.
the community, but engaging parts of you outside of the classroom.
Yeah. And I really attributed the ability to transition right into my career path because of that program. There were some other requirements. You had to get your resume updated every semester. And you had to have
Cool.
an internship every semester. So I had a lot of work experience. And when I graduated, I transitioned into my career with ease, kind of. And that wasn't a common practice then.
Before I hop over to Eric, one more thread I want to pull. Um, was this intimidating, and how did you overcome that intimidation factor? Because it sounds like we got we got that Eagle Scout list of things to do, knowing that it's a mountain to climb in a series of steps. Was that intimidating, especially in this new environment as a first generation college student and all the other factors? And how did you, if it was, how did you overcome that intimidation factor? What what do you say, Lenita? What was that intimidating, and did you have to overcome any intimidation to get there?
It was, if it would have been more intimidating if I were the only one in the group who had no idea what I was doing, who had been there for the first time. I didn't even know what Greek life was, those letters, no idea what that was. So it would have been if I were not amongst a group of people who also did not know. So it was a sense of safety actually, while I was in a very unfamiliar and uncomfortable environment, the community that I was a part of was very safe.
That makes sense. So it sounds like, the structure was really helpful, and it sounds like also the efforts of pulling community, that
Hmm.
it's not just put them in a room and give them a list of things to do, that the efforts of putting people in community with each other has a long-term value of that. Eric, I want to jump over. You came as a first gen from literally a worldly experience where this was a culture shock in a variety of ways. And if you could talk about sort of your navigating the layers of that culture shock, and knowing that we have a lot of students coming from these perspectives, how can we understand that and almost like reverse engineer it so that we can, for our professionals and for our students, understand how really the navigation of success can come in that layered environment of so many pieces of culture.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, even though I started growing up in Houston and I was aspiring, okay, you know what, this is where I'm going to go to school. This is what exactly I'm going to go do. But at the age of 11, that completely changed. And my family ended up moving to Ecuador, which for me at that time was a life-changing experience because it gave me a brand new perspective of the world and around access and around cultural experiences. And I had to learn all these things from scratch, even though I was quote exposed to it a little bit at home. It's very different to live through it. And so those muscles just started building early on of, okay, well, how do you learn these systems from scratch? How do you ask certain questions to navigate for help or to achieve something you're trying to look for or looking to help others as well? And then at that time, my aspiration was like, well, great, then I'm just going to grow up here in Ecuador and go to college in Ecuador. And then that changed
Nope.
at the age of 16 again because the whole economy collapsed and we ended up moving back to the United States. And so I had to restart again, navigate now the high school system and ask all these questions. But again, I was very fortunate because we had built those muscles early on and saying if you go into the unknown, the best way you're able to navigate the unknown is just be of service and ask for help and help others. And so that muscle was just slowly building out. And so when I go to college, I kind of just put in those same lenses, which was okay. I'm the first one here. There's hardly anyone that I know not only going to university, but also going to the engineering school. And so it's about building community, asking certain questions, asking for help. People want you to be successful. That was the other thing too, right? That you realize early on that people really do care about each other. And if you bring in that positive mindset as well, you will always be set up for success. Those doors will open up in different ways. You can't anticipate them, but if you come in with a good positive mindset into being successful in whatever you try to do, those doors will open up. And that's why I go back to that experience in Ecuador, right? My family could have looked at it from a very negative standpoint, from a very, okay, this is it, our life is changing and it is what it is. But no, it was like, no, this is something intentional. It's purposeful. We're doing this because something positive is going to come out of this. And so I took the same approach on going to school for the first time because I was the one bringing that insight back to my family, to my community, to my younger siblings, right? To my younger cousins. I'm like, okay, if I'm the first, then how do I make sure I bring that insight back to them? I might learn this today, but what are some of the experiences that I don't know about that I could bring back to other communities? And so that was the experience I was also very mindful of when you go through these different cultures, being the first doesn't mean you're the last, but being the first means you could bring others along. So their experience is a much more thoughtful experience than yours.
One thing I've gotten to know about you is there's an inherent kind of intellectual, but also like an interpersonal curiosity that you want to hear and learn and know about other people. And you want, and it's not like an intellectual curiosity. I'm curious about this person and I just want to understand it. It's almost like a connectivity. And I would guess that's part of what you're describing in your younger self, building that network of people that care. Can that be learned? Can it be practiced? Is it a muscle that can be built up through exercise?
I think it's a realization that we are all unique. I think when we go to college, we're on these same rooms together, 100, 200, sometimes maybe 1,000 people taking the exact same course with the exact same teacher. And we think that we're having the same experience, but we're not. We're going into that classroom, into that experience, into that day from a completely different perspective. And that's the beautiful thing as well, right? About going to schools and going to campuses is because even though we're all getting the same degrees, we're going to graduate around the same time together, the impact that we want to make in the world and what we're learning and how we want to bring that to life in the world is very unique. And I think that's also what, when I was navigating some of my different experiences in early, as a teenager and earlier in my childhood, that was also popping up, was realizing like, yes, I am a first generation American student, but my lived experience is very different than my neighbors or than the other person. And that's okay. That's the beauty of going into a campus like this and having these different experiences. So I think sometimes we get enamored with, we're all doing these things together and we're all going to get roughly the same degrees and we're all going to go roughly in the same jobs. But at the end of the day, the humanity, the uniqueness of us is really what makes us stand out. And I think, as we're building the 21st century workplace, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in our conversation, and the role that we get to play as first gen students, that's a very unique superpower. And so I think that's a very unique muscle that we get to build in time. We all build it, I think, in time, but I think it's that realization that we're all just unique human beings.
Before I jump over to Linnita, talk a little bit more about that, because I think what I'm hearing is that it's almost like, there's a first and a new perspective that's brought to some of the same problems as a first gen student that then can translate past college. That what you're talking about is using that outside, that different, that new perspective to build what is this new workforce, this new world. And it's not just a variety of cultural experiences, but it's really a new perspective that's built in some ways on that resilience of mind and curiosity and the other things that you're alluding to. Could you talk a little bit more about that through line of that success in first gen perspective all the way through, how that is involved in building this new workforce?
Yeah, I think it's that, not only that spirit of curiosity, but that spirit of navigating into something that's very unknown. Like we think we know what the next 5 years of the workplace looks like, but the reality is that there's going to be a lot of changes, right? The slowest rate of change we're ever going to feel is today. And so when we get comfortable with that muscle and that reality, we're able to go and step into that workforce, step into those universities, step into those experiences and look at them like a learning experience to bring others along versus a competitive experience and saying, okay, how am I going to go in here, cutthroat this, this experience and then leave others behind because I know what what the future holds. And the reality is that we don't. We know directionally what it might hold, but building that muscle of walking into the unknown is okay, and you will always have that early on in your career and throughout your life.
So the more comfortable you can become in flux, in in navigating unknown, and sort of that being the calm in turbulent waters serves you.
Yeah, and I love Lanita's story too on this too. I know she has a lot of stories also of
Yeah.
navigating into the unknown. Also, Lanita, just real quick, I mean, do you mind sharing that quick story about what perspectives you were giving early on, or what, how do I say this? What doors were closed for you early on because certain folks told you either you can or you can't do this, and how that ended up giving you a superpower eventually for you to build something for others?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Eric. And that actually was my experience. My dream was to be a journalist. I dreamed of being on TV as a newscaster. And at the time, including my parents, and I love them dearly, but everyone was like, "You're not gonna make any money." But okay. And it discouraged me in the back of my mind while I was still willing to pursue it by deciding on the major. It discouraged me. So I'm sitting in my journalism classes, and at the time, my speech was not good. I didn't speak like a journalist. I spoke like someone who, well, from my area, we use a lot of, we create our own language, and it's English, but it's not the English you hear on TV. And I spoke like that. My thoughts were not as fluid, my words were not clear, and I got discouraged and I changed my major. So, in addition to having them, my parents, and even those in my community say that's not the best path, when I realized I had a gap between my skill set and my interests, it was really easy to take the out. So I took the out only to wind up using all the skills that a journalist uses. And I always tell students, your path is your path. Those indications that you are highly fulfilled, very interested, intrigued by, they will not disappear. They will follow you. So you can choose if you take the out, it's going to resurface. And so here I am, I don't know, 15 years later, using the skills of a journalist. I'm in my home studio. I do a lot of virtual content. I consider myself to be pretty fluid in thoughts and explaining myself. That's a skill I developed over time. So be patient with yourself. There may be a gap between who you'd like to be and who you are. Just work on closing the gap versus running from it.
Linnita, that reminds me of, yes, sorry, Dave. I was going to say something real quick on sometimes it's that gradual work, right? We live in this age that we think things happen all of a sudden, or this next headline tells you, okay, this is the reality now. We have to move, or we're going to be left behind. But it's really that gradual work that pays off, that eventually that suddenly happens, and you think you're just, oh, I just got so lucky, I'm ready for this. No, this was built over time.
Good.
And that's why you're able to embrace the all of a sudden.
That's so good. Yes.
Yep. And that's what I was saying. There should be a gap. If there isn't a gap, you're not aspiring for much.
Yes.
You're not reaching, you're not stretching, and you're not giving yourself enough credit.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think in part you touched on some of the things I wanted to get to with you, and this idea of the imposter syndrome that you help people identify so they can slay it. It sounds like in some parts it's imposed, and it's it's put upon you that you carry. I think that's especially true with some of our first gen students. Either the things that they're said, or the things that they hear, or the things that they might perceive are being said, from environment and from that, that newness of being in spaces and places that they just might not have expected to be in.
Yeah.
And I know you're so good at talking through kind of how one can approach that sort of scenario to build toward that, you said, filling that gap between where they are and where they want to be. So if
Yeah.
you could speak a little to that.
Well, first, there has to be an awareness that the gap exists and how you feel about it. So I always say, when I was researching a little bit about, our makeup as adults, I can't remember the study that I read, but it said by the time you turn the age of 21, you've permanently downloaded and stored 3 times the average size of an encyclopedia. Now, we know Gen Z today, they don't walk around with an encyclopedia. They probably don't have one in their homes, but I had one, and it was about this thick. So 3 times the amount of that, of memories, words, experiences stored in your mind. So that means when you arrive on your college campus, you are pre-programmed. Your environment programmed you. And that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes your programming is great. Like, you were empowered, you were encouraged to do the unknown. You were given, so your environment consists of not just where you live, but also where you learn. If you're a part of any sports teams or extracurricular activities, if you're part of any groups like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, if you're a part of a faith-based community, all of those experiences will make up who you are. So when you get to college, I always challenge students, now that you're here, and I'm bringing to your forefront that the who you are exists because of the environment. Are you aligned with that? Are you okay with your programming? Some students raise their hand and they're like, it's like 50, the room is usually divided. I'm like, yep, I'm good. This aligns with who I am. And there's some people who boldly, courageously raise their hand and say, no, my programming doesn't align with who I am. And sometimes the programming determines what they're studying, because they've been told this is the right way. And so to answer your question, that acknowledgement. So then the next one is, well, who are you? What do you like? What makes you feel fulfilled? Where do you find joy? And, David and Eric, some students don't know. You could be programmed so well, you don't have an identity. So, and I can't do that in 60 minutes. Come on now. That's some ongoing work.
That's the extended workshop. That's right.
There you go.
But at least the acknowledgement and awareness, like, wow, now it's time to discover that.
Mm.
How can you use this
Sometimes
semester
asking
to
that good
discover that?
question,
Yeah,
sometimes asking the good question matters more than the first answer that could come to mind. You know, it's funny because you're talking about that journey. Eric, like you were saying, it's not a binary. Okay, now the adulting. I'm people talking about doing the adulting things. It's like these are a set of behaviors. It's like, guess what? You are an adult. At some point, you do the behaviors, you're an adult, but it's not turning the page. This is a journey in many ways. One of the things you were just talking about, Linnita, I think is really interesting is that dissection of what your values are and what you value and how that builds toward the person you want to become. Again, going to that gap. I know you
David, if I could jump,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, if I could jump into that real quick, one of the encouragements I try to give students as well as we're navigating, what majors they want to be, how do they want to start their career, is actually I encourage them to ask the question, what problem do you care about solving?
that's good.
Right. And so when they're able to articulate that, the degree they could go and get, the internship they could go and get, kind of just starts appearing in a certain way, right? A certain format. So even though I am a certain major, I'm going to a particular school, I am in a certain region, doesn't define what I could possibly do in the next several years. It's
That's
really the
good.
problem I care about solving that will bring in those right tools and that right unique experience for them to go and navigate um, basically this future of work or how they're developing themselves as well.
It's a great question to ask.
Mm. And I think we're and that makes sense in terms of the step by step. I think peers and mentors selected well and used well is a strategy that's good for all students, but especially good for our first gen students. It's the idea of, and I know both of you include these in your programs in different ways. So I want you to be able to speak to and approach this topic of not just how we find the right mentors, because that process of searching through networks and being good at networking to get to that right mentor, that's part of it.
Mhm.
Using the relationship, and I don't mean it in a transactional way, but leveraging it in the most positive and effective way. Leveraging that relationship takes strategy and thought and a deliberate set of behaviors and actions. It's not accidental. Good, I got a mentor. Whew. It's there's real strategy involved. It's not just arriving at it. And I know both of you speak to that in your programs in a strategic way with very tangible tips. So if you could, I'll start with Linnita and then you can throw it to Eric. Share some of these strategies of finding and leveraging that great network to have a mentor and how to use that mentor toward the best use.
For sure. I'm giving my secret sauces away,
Just a
but
couple pieces, a couple
only for
elements,
you, David.
a
Okay,
couple elements.
so I call it actually your executive cabinet. This is your council that you go to for support. And even no matter how old you are or what stage of life you're in, we all should have one. And so I pull out the attributes of a person that we should be looking for. And the first one I would say is you should have a connector in your cabinet. This is someone, not to David's point, you ain't around them because you just want what they got. You're around them because you see how they recycle the things that they contribute, meaning they're giving, and people are connecting to them. This was my high school guidance counselor who actually knew my admissions counselor in college. I didn't know that. When I was placed on the wait list for Towson, my high school guidance counselor called Brian on the phone. She knew Brian's number by heart. That's how I got into Towson because she was a connector. Now, I always tell students, people connectors don't walk around saying, I'm connected, who you want to talk to? You won't know. So it's just your job to be a good person. And always, to Eric's point, be looking for ways to help people. My entire high school career, I didn't go to lunch. I went to the guidance office to help my guidance counselor. I used to help her run transcripts, which is illegal because that meant I saw all student grades. But I used to run transcripts. I used to pull students in testing time. I was like her mini unofficial admin.
Yeah.
So there was nothing that she wasn't willing to do when it came time for college admissions. I didn't know it would work out that way. I was just being helpful. So how can you be helpful? Plant yourself in a place where you're just there to give. And you never know. Someone might be a connector. There are two other attributes. The other one is an encourager. Because I know you know this. You guys know this, but college is hard. I'd say the easiest part was the first year. The first year was the easiest. After that, it went downhill for the better. For me, I'll speak for me. And so I needed someone who I can call. And if I couldn't call them, who on campus could have a listening ear without judgment, where I felt safe. And then that last piece is you need a driver. And these are people who set goals and usually they exceed them. They they set goals so frequently, you almost develop a little bit of apathy for them and their achievements. Like, okay, next, I know you're always winning. But you need people like that because their energy is infectious. So when you feel like I don't have it in me and you have a driver in your circle, they're gonna be like, well, what can I do to make you get it in you? Well, what do you need from me? Sometimes you will have to borrow other people's energy. So when you think of mentorship, think about an executive cabinet and looking for some of those character traits, someone who's encouraging, a driver, or a connector. And the person could have all of the attributes, but I'd say find one to fill each seat.
I love that, Linnita. Oh my God, you made me think about all those folks that were in my life without having that that strategy or that tool set. That is a wonderful, wonderful advice for our students navigating that. It reminds me of the driver that I had in my life, and I was a sophomore actually at the time when she became a big part of my experience. At that time, I was very active as just a participating student. I would help out the freshmen. I would help out with some of the scholarship programs. I was helping give tours of the engineering college, and so just being of help. And also I was captain of the intramural soccer team. I wasn't the best soccer player, but I just wanted to help out, organize, send out a few emails and reminders. And she comes back from this conference, and she sets all the sophomores together, and she says, "Hey, I just came from this conference called the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and I think we should have a chapter of this organization on our campus." And all sophomores kind of just look at each other. We're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, cool. Like we could sell a few sodas and like raise funds. Like yeah, whatever you need us to do." And she's like, "No, no, I'm telling you this." And that time she's a senior, a junior, senior, so in her final years. She's like, "I'm telling you this because I want you, all of you, to lead this organization. So we're going to found this organization, and all the sophomores are going to lead it." And we're all again staring at each other. We're like, "Well, look, we're like, we barely found out where all the restrooms are on campus. like, I don't think we're ready to start a student organization." And we asked her, like, "Why?" And she's like, "Because if we start this organization, if the juniors and seniors start it, we leave in 24 months, right? 12 to 24 months. But you will stay here. You're going to stay here and you're going to see this through and you're going to grow an organization." And I remember just thinking at that point, just saying, wait, she could do this herself. She could put this on her resume and she'll get any job she wants in the next 12 months. Like as the founder of an organization that's going to impact thousands of students for the next 24 months, that's a big accomplishment. But she thought beyond that. She was like, no, no, I need to do something that's not only impactful for the students that are here, but for the next generations that are coming. And that's a lesson that I've learned as a mentee. That I didn't know she was going to be my mentor, but she was the one that was encouraging all of us sophomores. Fast forward a few months later, I ended up being the founding president for that organization, trying
Wow.
to figure it out, right? But I always look
Mhm.
back now to that moment and saying that's what a leadership looks like. That's what a mentor looks like. Yes, they're mentoring you, they're helping you, but they know that that seed that they're planting is way deeper than just my relationship with that person. But it goes back to what Linnita was saying, which was you're just being of service. And when you're being of service, you will be called upon, right, to those moments, right? More likely, they said, well, Eric's the captain of the soccer team, so he could help lead an organization. Sure. But it was very helpful because I had built that brand, right? I had built that brand just being of service. So, and those, again, those doors will open up, those opportunities will open up. And to this day, that organization still exists. It's won chapter of the year, I think 4 times
Wow.
over the last 20 years. They just celebrated 20-year anniversary. And so you never know, 25-year anniversary, actually. So you never know the impact that, again, that mentorship, that relationship, that seed that's planted, those opportunities that you look for just to help and encourage someone else that could last for generations.
Hmm.
And how many people has that organization served
I
since
know.
like it's a long, long wave of ripples from that little stone, you know, and you know
Yeah.
that I'll figure it out. The confidence from others, maybe
Yeah.
those that are achieving all those goals you're talking about, Lena, like borrowing their confidence and their drive, just a little bit of it, being in
A little
the
bit.
wake of their drive, there's power to it.
Power.
You know, and both of you and Eric, you just brought this up. Is there, and I ask out of you know, sort of ignorance of this, is there added value in the first gen college experience for those, you know, kind of the identity specific professional and you know, sort of engagement organizations? Is there a unique value to making sure that those, and I'm thinking both from the students seeking them as well as from our administrators and professionals that are watching this, highlighting them and supporting them, and like there are opportunities for them to invest in these organizations. Is there a specific value add for our first gen students? What do you both
Yes,
think?
absolutely. And I recalled also how we started this conversation on Linnita mentioning the importance of community. It's just another example of community on campus. There's so many different beautiful communities on campus, and this is also one of them. Not only serving the students that are there today, but also making that connection to the professional world. So as what I learned from that experience was that now, you know, 5 years after that, 10 years after that, now you have alumni and they're coming back and they're mentoring the students, or they're being that connection into a certain industry that the students want to go and explore, or the university itself wants to go and explore. I was one of the first that went into the tech sector, coming from a school that was predominantly graduating students that were going to the oil and gas sector. And so even though I started my career there, from going to oil and gas, I transitioned into tech. And so I was now used as an example saying, hey, Eric, how do we do that? How do we transition into this tech space, into this new world that we're building? And so you might be called upon that as well, right? But it all starts with community. It starts with organization. So first I start serving that organization as an alumni, and then all of a sudden it becomes a bigger impact that you can make. Now you're serving the college, now you're impacting the university. So again, is that gradual, then suddenly work, right? And I think investing in those student organizations, investing in those communities early on, pay off dividends for decades.
Yeah, and I'll add, wherever there's a knowledge gap, there will be an insecurity. So if I were a part of a bigger entity and I'm saying to myself, I want people to come here, I want them to stay, I want them to belong. One of the ways what a KPI that I would be looking for, a key performance indicator, what are potential knowledge gaps of people who might be a part of this community? Not just from the students, but also from the administration and leadership too. And then I would look for, how do we solve those knowledge gaps?
Mm.
First gen programming solves a lot of the knowledge gaps of just, what's socially appropriate and what's not. What is this? How do you do this? Where is this located? How do I that's a knowledge gap and a great insecurity when you're, in a community of people who might have 5 generations. Sometimes going to the same school they went to, so they already know how to get to the dorm and who to talk to. They might already have a contact on the campus when they get there. Because Professor Eric has been there for 55 years. He couldn't wait for the fourth generation to come through. So, you know, just closing those knowledge gaps so that there's less of an insecurity. We'll always have it. We're imperfect, we're human, but there's less of an insecurity about belonging and understanding.
You know, you bring up a curiosity that we're in this new environment as a first gen college student, and I've heard about this, and I know there's something you talk about, that first gen guilt, that idea of, you know, I'm in a new place, I'm in a new space, yet everything I've known is behind me in a very different place. What's that friction like in terms of navigating it, and how can our professionals that are here in the room help support students that are encountering that feeling? Either of you that want to jump in, that idea of that first gen guilt. Either of you that want to jump in, that
Let's see, Lenita, you want to take? I can take a first stab
Yeah.
at it.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Eric.
So I remember my freshman year when I had a chance to apply for FAFSA. I had a chance to apply for all these grants, and it was great, and I had a very supportive counselor and a very supportive school, and so I started, you know, my freshman year. I had all this great support, and I remember that one evening I decided to say, I have to tell all my friends in Ecuador that there's this great programs that could help you go to college here because they're about to graduate 6 months from now. So this is great, and then we can all meet up in college, and it's gonna be awesome. So I email all my friends using my Hotmail account, and when they reply back, they're like, Eric, we can't do this. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, no, it's called FAFSA, and you get these grants, and they give you this money, and yeah, I'm more than happy to coach you and help you, like to figure this out. I said, Eric, we can't do that because we need a student visa. And I was like, what's a student visa? Like, I had no idea. I just thought everyone has access to all the same tools I did. And when I realized when I started asking these questions, I realized like, well, no, I have access to certain things that other communities don't. And
Mhm.
so what that helped me understand was like, what am I going to do about it? Right? Like now I am put in this situation as not only a first gen, but also someone that's representing a community that wasn't able to leave the economic collapse of Ecuador in the 90s. So what am I going to do with this unique opportunity that I have and give everything I got? Because I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing my family, I'm representing all the other people that would have loved to be in those exact same shoes that I was that freshman year, making those applications, just having those opportunities. And so when you have an opportunity like this to come in, one of the things I was able to navigate through to surpass some of that sense of guilt was like, no, it's also a sense of doing something that you're representing others as well. And it's not just you doing this for the first time, but you're carrying all these amazing individuals that want you to be successful as well. And so I'll
Mhm.
always go back to that, especially very similar to Linnita, right? I had a great freshman year, and then the sophomore and junior, like they sometimes they have these ups and downs. When you hit those ups and downs, that's when you need to kind of dig deep and say, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for, other than just myself? And you
Yeah.
bring all these other people along. Same thing with my grandmother. I have a grandmother story that I've shared in my programs. That again, she ingrained in me this sense of lifelong learning and saying, hey, you are the one that could do this, and everyone has given all these sacrifices for you to be in that room today. And so what are you going to do with that opportunity? But more importantly, what are you going to do for the opportunity to make sure you leave other doors open for others as well?
And I want to talk on the other side of the spectrum. I want to talk about the social deficit that you feel
Mm,
when you've been placed in an environment that is advancing your thinking. Your vocabulary is growing, your perception of the world is magnified. You cannot unsee what you're seeing. But when you go back to your original environment, they have not encountered that change. So the conversations are different. There's a lid on the things that they understand or have capacity to understand. You've been exposed beyond what you've been raised in. And
Mhm.
that creates a social deficit. So then you feel a little like now you feel like the odd one. You went feeling like
yep.
the hero, but you come back feeling like okay, I can't talk too much about that or can't share about that because.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to create a new social environment. You have to create a new social norm.
Mm,
And because there's a part of you that will never feel like you belong outside of that's where you're from. As you start growing, you won't feel like you belong there. Now, like Eric, you have a heart to want to help.
yeah.
That's a small portion now that you've been exposed. You want to help and reach. So you got to grow your social circles as you're helping. And that could be a little lonely at
A lot.
first.
It's almost you can't go home again, right? It changes you and your perspective of everything around. So what you've left behind isn't still doesn't fit you. Your old self that fit there isn't you anymore. That's probably got to be an interesting challenge, especially again for first gen, because they may be going through it and all of their peers are not. Whereas,
Yeah.
from environments where most of the students go off to college, they're experiencing parallel growth. And they may not be the same growth, but when they come back for Thanksgiving break or for holidays, they can identify what they're going through in the person next to. And it's a different experience, I guess, for the first generation college student you're describing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That was powerful, Linnea. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Well, with that also, you both are really good at, and I want to spend some time before we finish, at helping students identify strategies. We talked about it a little bit, but what's on the other side of that gap? that dream job, that dream person, if they're now constructing the identity of who they should and want to become, you've talked a little bit about, Linnita, how it's all based already on the values that they bring to the table. That's who they are. They may want to keep some, they want to lose some, they want to get new ones, and like all of that, but it's all still in a conceptual construction. And part of that is that dream job and that dream career.
Mhm.
You both give strategies and not just mindsets, but some specific strategies. And if I can ask you not to give away the whole store of what people book you to come to their campuses to do, but maybe just a sample, just a taste, what are some of those strategies that both of you see that immediately will connect with those that are first gen students watching this and those that are on our campuses supporting those people?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in first, Eric, if that's okay.
Sure, please.
So, I want to know, this is a strategy, by the way. It's called your hotspot. It's when your ideal role intersects with your ideal industry. So, your ideal role might be you'd like to be a veterinarian, but the intersection might be for lost animals, for abused animals, for animals that appear on television, maybe the care of performing animals, circus animals. That would be the intersection of the industry. You might like to teach, so the role might be teacher, but the intersection could be at a non-traditional school, at those who've experienced incarceration, teaching them life skills. So if you could find the intersection that you are most passionate about, when it's time to interview, you are going to appear like a magnet because most people are not aligned in their hotspot. They got one of the pieces of the puzzle. When you have both, you have compassion for the people in that environment, understanding, desire to support them, and then you turn around and got the nerve to know or want to know how to do the role, you would be preferred. So find your hot spot. That is the intersection of your ideal role and then its ideal industry.
I love that, Lanita. And if I could take that and we could build on it is explore that hotspot even when you are in college and exploring internships, right? So you could have identified today, this is what I care about, this is my ideal industry, and you go and explore it. And one of the things now looking back that I appreciate about my internships experience is that those are 3 months interview. They're interviewing you for 3 months, but you're also interviewing the company, you're interviewing the industry, you're interviewing that role. And so it could be that you leave those 3 months, you're like, you know what? I don't think this is what I was expecting. And that is okay. That is okay because when you,
Amazing.
exactly right, when you graduate and then you look for that role and then you find a role that you didn't like, you can't tell them in 3 months. Well, you can, but it's not ideal. That that's not what you were looking for. So that is a muscle you could build early on and just say, you know what? I want to try this. I want to go and explore it, and it's an investment in that company, it's an investment in yourself, and you come back having learned something about that space, and you bring back and you tweak that approach maybe a little bit differently for the next year, maybe a different industry, maybe a different job, and you go and just explore it. This is the time to do it. When you are a student, go and explore those careers. And the other thing too is that when you enter the workforce, one of the things that now looking back that I appreciate even more is that those roles now in this era that everything's on LinkedIn, everything is online. You think those are the roles that people are looking for? Yes, to a certain extent, those are the jobs that have probably passed the 90-day window that the company said, fine, we will go and invest and look for these jobs. The reality is the roles today happen from networking, right? Happen from, hey, Lanita,
Yeah.
I know you're super interested in this. In 3 months, there's this role coming up. Would that be something you're interested in?
Yep.
David, hey, what do you think about this? I'm thinking of doing strategy here. Who do you think might be good for this role? That is how jobs are created, right? And so those networks that you get to build, that point in the community, David, I think you're bringing up too early on that you build these relationships early on. To this day, we're connected. We go to each other's weddings, we go to each other's baby showers or graduations or what have you. For folks those relationships that you built with those first generation students or those student organizations early on, because they become part of your network. And so those networks are the ones that, again, or even if you're looking, share with your network and just say, you know what, I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for this. This is my hotspot that I'm looking for. What do you think? And those job roles will show up. I know it might be a little bit more difficult when you're starting off, but those relationships that you're building early on, those are the ones that are going to open up doors early on in your career. My first job, actually, upon graduation, was from an internship. I was an electrical engineer intern, a power engineer at a refinery. I did the internship, and again, I was very fortunate enough to have a great coach that said, Eric, if you do not like this role, raise your hand and just say it's okay. So I raised my hand. I said, you know what? I appreciate all the experience. I appreciate everything that everyone did for me, but this is not exactly what I was looking for. And then they said, Eric, but we want you. So what are you interested in learning more about? We will spend one more week with you. And I said, I want to learn more about automation. And they made me go to an automation role for a week. I loved it. And that's where I started off my career was, okay, great. Then that is where your full-time offer will come from, right? But again, they're making an investment in you, not necessarily investment on the job requirements. And so more that you've built that relationship with that organization, those people, they'll make an investment in you.
That's so good, Eric. I'm really glad
Mm.
you had that experience.
Yep. And the secret sauce and what not necessarily said is, even though you didn't desire that job, that work, that role, you did the job well enough that they
Yes,
got to see value in you beyond someone who can do that job. That
absolutely.
they saw the value in you because you said, this isn't what I want to do. I don't want to scoop ice cream, but damn it, I got the scoop and I got the ice cream. I'm going to do it well. And
Yeah.
whatever position. And that's what they always say about internships. It's a great way to figure out what you don't want to do for the next 40 years of your life. And it's better that you know now. But the thing is, like you're describing, be that person that they can't let go of. Be, and that's bringing your values to the table. That's bringing who you are and all those things that Linnita, you were talking about before that have made you and that have brought you to that space. Bring all that so that you can be the person that they ask, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And again, that connector on your board, Linnita, what I hear from you is you be able to tell them, I want to I want to work with animals in entertainment. And they're like, oh, well, great. Fantastic. We know someone that works at SeaWorld. Like, okay, perfect. Like that connection and that truth in your mind of where you're headed, of this role, this industry, and how they connect, being able to share it, it's magic. It's magic.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing before we close, you're turning back time, and if you could turn back time, and I won't sing it, um, what are you telling 18-year-old you right as you're walking onto that college campus? Your mind's spinning. So whatever you tell that person, the 18-year-old you, better be succinct. It better be clear and directed because they're already looking around like, oh my goodness, and they're overwhelmed and all of that. What what is it that you needed to hear from the future you? Eric, I'll let you start.
Um, One of the things that I would share with 18-year-old me is that you will learn that there is a difference between your job and your work. That your job is something that you will have these opportunities to apply for, that you will build a career around, but take some time building out what you want your work to be. And your work is really that impact that you get to make. And I was very fortunate because I was surrounded by student organizations. I had a great supporting team as well around student success, that I was slowly building that muscle. I just didn't know I was building my work. Right. And now looking back, saying like, hey, embrace that space, that yes, it might not look like, again, a job requirement or a particular degree requirement, but that experience that you're going to have on that campus is going to build these muscles that you will utilize for decades and for the rest of your life, not only as a professional, but as a parent, as a mentor, as a community member, as a community leader, right? Build out what that work that you want to build out, understand what problem you care about solving. And that's okay if it changes in time, because you're going to change in time, right? And embrace what change could bring, and dive into those unknowns, because that is really where your work will be defined. And jobs will change, embrace that, but your work is what is going to carry you through the rest of your life.
Hmm.
That's good. Your job and your work. I would tell my 18-year-old self, touch everything.
Mm.
Touch everything just to try it because this is the most exploratory period of life that you probably won't get again. So the next time it comes around, it's going to come at a more expensive cost and it's going to sacrifice time is going to be more expensive then.
Mm-hmm.
So touch it and experience it now. Fail now.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell myself.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Everything, at that time, the risk can be a lot lower in terms of your time. Invest some time. I want photography or whatever it is. It's this random whim. Invest the time now. It's a lower risk than years to come. That's fantastic. Love that. Both of you, thank you so much. I'd be remiss if I didn't make sure that everyone watching knows this is great, and they're even better when they come to your campus. Like that's just the reality. And they have a variety of programs. And as you look at both of their pages, you can see, as we were talking also, there's that bright thread that runs all through their conversations. And yes, they can do this or they can do that. But what you're seeing here is the essence of who they are and how they serve. And I think that's what comes forward in whether it's our first gen students or any of our students that you're going to do programming for. So we'd love to help you bring either and both of them to your campus and frequently. And I also hope that you're going to check out our Campus Speak page on our future webinars and all that are coming out. And you can go to campusspeak.com web series to see what is coming up next. Eric, Linnita, thank you both so much for what you do and for being here today to just share a little bit.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.